Have you ever looked at the person you love the most and seen a stranger? Not just a stranger, but a monster hiding in plain sight. We're taught that a father's love is a shield, a fortress meant to protect us. But what happens when that fortress becomes a prison? What happens when the man who is supposed to be your hero becomes the villain of your story? Prepare yourself, because my story is a testament to the terrifying truth that sometimes the deepest love is just the most dangerous obsession in disguise. Before we dive into this harrowing journey, welcome to Stoic Love. If you're fascinated by the complex, often dark nature of human connection, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss where this story goes. My name is Chloe, and I'm 22 years old now. But to understand the cage I'm in, you have to go back to when I was 8, living a life that felt like a faded photograph in a small, suffocating town in Ohio. That was the year my parents' marriage finally imploded. My mother, Karen, was a woman who seemed to shrink a little more each day, worn down by the quiet desperation of a life she hadn't chosen. My father, David, was the opposite, a force of nature, a brilliant software engineer with a restless energy that our small town could never contain. He saw the future in lines of code, and our sleepy corner of the world was stuck firmly in the past. Their separation was less of a bang and more of a slow, painful tear. After the divorce, Dad moved to Silicon Valley to chase his destiny, and just as he'd predicted, he caught it. He became a ghost in my life, a voice on the phone who slowly transformed into an occasional visitor, arriving in flashy rental cars that looked alien on our cracked, potholed streets. Mom, meanwhile, found solace in the familiar. She remarried a man named Gary, a foreman at the local auto parts factory. He was a good man in the way a block of concrete is good, solid, dependable, and completely unmovable. Our life was dictated by the shriek of the factory whistle. We lived in a cramped, 2-bedroom duplex that always smelled faintly of sawdust and fried onions. Gary was a man of rigid principles. No music played too loud, no skirts above the knee, no makeup that could be seen from more than a foot away. My behavior was to be a reflection of his traditional values, and my bedroom, which I shared with my mother, was a testament to that. We slept in one room, a queen-sized bed for her, and a small twin cot for me, pushed into the corner. Gary occupied the master bedroom, his sanctuary. I would lie awake at night, listening to the muffled drone of the TV from his room, and ache with a jealousy so sharp it felt like a physical pain. My friends at school talked about their rooms as personal kingdoms, places where they could blast music, experiment with makeup, and simply be themselves, unwatched. My kingdom was a 3-foot-wide cot and a life under constant, joyless surveillance. By the time I was 17, the tension in that little duplex was a thick, unbreathable fog. The friction between my mom and Dad, simmering for years over the phone, finally boiled over. Dad, now a celebrated tech entrepreneur crowned with success, argued that I was wilting in Ohio. He wanted me to move in with him in Palo Alto, California, where I could have opportunities, a real future. Mom, terrified of losing me, resisted. Their arguments were epic, transatlantic battles fought through tearful phone calls and scathing emails. In the end, after weeks of emotional warfare, she relented. I remember the day I packed my bags, a wave of guilt and ecstatic relief washing over me. I was finally escaping. My father was everything Gary wasn't: modern, sophisticated, and in my eyes, the kindest, most understanding man in the world. He lived in a sprawling, minimalist mansion in the Palo Alto Hills, a world of glass walls, high ceilings, and polished concrete floors that seemed a universe away from the peeling linoleum I'd grown up with. When I arrived, he showed me to my new room. It was bigger than our entire duplex in Ohio. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of a canyon filled with oak trees. On one wall, he'd hung framed posters of my favorite indie rock bands. A sleek new MacBook sat on a white oak desk, and the walk-in closet was already stocked with clothes he'd bought for me in my size. I felt like I'd stepped out of a black-and-white film and into glorious Technicolor. His long-term partner, Alana, was a gentle, almost ethereal woman. She was a renowned digital artist, with kind, searching eyes and a quiet shyness. Childless, she wrapped me in a warm, maternal embrace that I hadn't realized I was starving for. She taught me how to cook sophisticated Californian cuisine, helped me navigate the complex social landscape of my new elite private school, and we'd spend hours discussing art and literature. Sometimes, though, I'd catch a flicker of profound sadness in her eyes, a loneliness that seemed to linger even when Dad was in the room. I felt a deep sympathy for her, this beautiful, talented woman who seemed to be orbiting my father's brilliant sun without ever truly feeling its warmth. 2 years later, just after my 19th birthday, Alana was diagnosed with a rare, aggressive form of cancer. Dad spared no expense, flying in specialists from around the world and securing her a room at Stanford's best oncology center. But despite all his resources, all his desperate, frantic efforts, she passed away 6 months later. The glass house on the hill suddenly felt very cold, very empty. We were left alone, 2 islands of grief in an ocean of silence. To keep Dad from drowning in his sorrow, I took it upon myself to become the caretaker. I learned to manage the household accounts. I cooked his favorite meals. I made sure the house was always immaculate. I was 19, but I felt a sense of adult responsibility, a feeling that I was managing things wonderfully, that I was essential to his survival. One day, my mother came to visit. She was shocked by how much I had changed, how much I had grown into a young woman who mirrored her own appearance, but carried herself with a confidence she'd never had. She suggested I move back to Ohio, telling me that Gary had softened and that things would be different. I refused without a second thought. I couldn't leave my father alone. Besides, my life was in California now. Dad supported my decision, telling Mom that I would stay with him as long as I wanted. He was still in his prime, a handsome, athletic man full of a restless energy. I could see that my presence, my care, brought him a genuine, deep-seated joy, and so I stayed. The years passed. I turned 22, graduated from Stanford with a degree in art history, and grew into a confident young woman. I had no shortage of suitors, but a strange pattern began to emerge. Every time a young man showed interest in me, Dad would greet him with a veneer of politeness that barely concealed a chilling coldness. He would find subtle ways to undermine them, a condescending question about their career prospects, a dismissive comment about their family background. Eventually, he would find an excuse to push them away entirely. He always said the same thing. I was too young, too brilliant to settle down. I needed to live for myself. I didn't argue. I saw his sadness, the lingering grief for Alana, and I told myself he was just being a protective father, terrified of being left alone again. One night, after another promising date had been expertly sabotaged by Dad's quiet disapproval, I found him sitting in the dark kitchen. "Dad," I asked softly, "why do you push everyone away? Don't you want me to be happy, to find someone?" He was silent for a long time, staring out at the city lights twinkling in the valley below. "I just don't know how I would live without you, Chloe," he finally replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I've gotten so used to you being here. You're my only joy." His words moved me to tears. I promised him I would never abandon him, that even if I got married I'd visit every day. I even suggested that he could live with my future husband and me. He just smiled, a sad, knowing smile, and said, "We'll see about that. For now, let's just enjoy this." What would you do if you were in Chloe's shoes? Is this a father's love or the beginning of a dangerous obsession? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective is what makes the Stoic love community so powerful. After that conversation, our relationship intensified. We spent almost all of our time together. He started taking me as his +1 to exclusive tech industry parties, introducing me as his brilliant daughter. He bought me expensive designer dresses, telling me he loved to see me shine. He was so happy when I wore the things he bought for me, always telling me I was the most beautiful, the smartest, the best daughter in the world. I blossomed under his constant, adoring gaze. One day, while cleaning his home office, I saw something that made my blood run cold. On his desk was a small, high-end bottle of men's moisturizer, but tucked behind it, almost hidden, was a prescription bottle. I knew what it was for, a powerful medication used to treat erectile dysfunction. 1,000 thoughts crashed through my mind. I told myself it was normal. He was a healthy man in his late 40s. He deserved to find happiness, to have a partner. I decided I had to be the one to encourage him. That evening, as we sat in the living room, I broached the subject as delicately as I could. "Dad," I started, my heart hammering, "I know you must be lonely. You deserve to be happy. Why don't you try to find someone, to start dating again?" His face, which had been relaxed and smiling, instantly hardened. "What are you talking about?" he snapped, his voice laced with a sudden, shocking anger. "How do you know about things like that? Have you been going through my things?" I was terrified, but I held my ground. "Dad, I'm an adult now. I'm 22. It's normal. I just want you to be happy." His expression softened, but his eyes were dark and intense. He sighed and said, "I'm happy with you, Chloe." The finality in his voice was chilling. I felt a profound sense of unease settle over me. I decided never to bring it up again. A few days later, Dad called me into his bedroom. He was sitting on the edge of his king-sized bed. He patted the spot next to him. I sat down, and he moved so close I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Chloe," he said, his voice a low murmur, "you've grown up so much. You're so beautiful. I just want to protect you from everyone." He reached out and began to stroke my hair, and a shiver, not entirely unpleasant, ran through me. He pulled me into a hug, a tender, encompassing embrace. For a moment, I felt like a little girl again, safe in my father's arms. "I'm sorry for being so hard on those boys, Chloe," he whispered into my hair. "I was just so afraid of losing you." Then I felt something shift. His hand, which had been resting on my back, slid down to the small of my back, his fingers pressing into me in a way that was not fatherly. My heart began to race. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to pull away, but he held me firmly, his grip like steel. He began to kiss my neck, my hair, his lips soft but insistent. I didn't understand what was happening. A part of me was horrified, screaming in silent protest, but another part of me, a part I was deeply ashamed of, liked it. I closed my eyes, my mind a swirling vortex of confusion and forbidden pleasure. "Chloe," he whispered, his voice soft and persuasive, "I don't want you to ever leave. I don't want you to get married. I want you to be mine, only mine." I realized then that something deeply, terribly wrong was happening, but I felt paralyzed. He was my father, my hero, my entire world. He lifted me effortlessly into his arms and laid me down on the bed. He looked down at me, his eyes full of a fiery, possessive light. I was terrified, but also drawn to him. He was so strong, so dominant. I couldn't resist. I just lay there, looking up at him. I woke up in my own bed, drenched in a cold sweat. My heart was pounding like a drum. No one was beside me. The room was silent, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight filtering through my large windows. The memories of the previous night were hazy, disjointed, like scenes from a fever dream. I couldn't remember how I had gotten back to my own room. I stumbled to the mirror. A girl with wild hair and red-rimmed eyes stared back at me. On the side of my neck, just below my ear, was a small, faint bruise, a love bite. I didn't want to think about it. I just wanted to forget. But my memory, cruel and vivid, wouldn't let me. I remembered his warm hands on my body, the scent of his expensive cologne, the rough scrape of his evening beard against my skin. I remembered him whispering that I was his property, that I belonged only to him. I sat in my room for hours, too scared to leave. I was afraid of seeing him, afraid of what would happen next. But what was I really afraid of? The horrifying truth was, I was afraid he would hold me in his arms again, that he would kiss me. It was terrifying, but a dark, shameful part of me had found some pleasure in it. Finally, I knew I couldn't hide forever. I had to face him. I had to understand. I crept out of my room and went to the kitchen. He was sitting at the table, sipping an espresso, looking as handsome and confident as ever. But when he looked up at me, I saw something new in his eyes, a glint of ownership that made me tremble. He smiled. "Good morning, my sweet Chloe. Did you sleep well?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded. He stood up, walked over to me, and kissed my forehead. His touch was warm, tender. "Forgive me, my sweet girl," he murmured. "I didn't mean to scare you. It's just, I can't live without you." He pulled me into a hug. I felt his strong hands on my waist, his head resting on my shoulder. I couldn't resist. I stood there, limp in his embrace, and hugged him back. He pulled away and smiled. "Tonight, I want you to wear that black dress I bought you, the one from Chanel. We'll go to that new Michelin-starred restaurant in the city, and then we'll come home and watch a movie together, just like we used to." I was completely under his spell. I was his property. That evening, I put on the dress. It was a simple, elegant black silk dress that clung to my figure. It was more daring than anything I would have chosen for myself, but I couldn't refuse him. I felt uncomfortable, but also undeniably beautiful. When I walked into the living room, his eyes lit up. "My sweet Chloe," he breathed, "you are the most beautiful woman I have ever seen." I blushed, but I loved it. We dined at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the San Francisco Bay. He was attentive, charming, telling funny stories and showering me with compliments. I felt like a princess. For a few hours, I forgot everything that had happened. I was just enjoying the moment. When we got home, he put on a movie and pulled me into his arms on the couch. I felt his hand on my waist, his warm breath on my neck. He began whispering those same words again, that I was his property, that I had to belong only to him. He leaned in slowly. His eyes were burning. He kissed me, not like a father kisses a daughter, but like a man kisses a woman he desires. My head spun. I closed my eyes. I felt like I was being carried away by a powerful current, unable to resist, unwilling to resist. I just wanted it to continue. He pulled away and looked at me, his eyes filled with a terrifying mix of love and something wild, primal. "My Chloe," he said, his voice a low growl. "You're mine. You're mine forever. I will never let you be with anyone else." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. I was his. If you've ever felt trapped in a situation that felt impossible to escape, know that you are not alone. Sharing our stories is the first step toward healing. We at Stoic Love believe in the power of that shared experience. From that day on, our relationship became a twisted, secret intimacy. He no longer allowed me to see my friends or go out with anyone. He wanted me to be only with him. He was my world, and I was his. He showered me with gifts, designer clothes, expensive jewelry, the latest tech gadgets. He began taking photos of me constantly, hundreds of them, when I was reading, sleeping, getting out of the shower. He said I was a goddess, and he needed to capture my beauty. I felt desired, a new and intoxicating sensation. I was his lover, his slave, his doll, and to my great despair, a part of me loved it. I knew it was wrong, a sin, a sickness, but I couldn't stop. I had become addicted to him, to his caresses, to his possessive, all-consuming love. One day, as we lay in bed, a flicker of my old self returned. "Dad," I asked, my voice small, "what would happen if Mom found out about us?" He turned to me, his expression cold as ice. "If she ever tries to come between us," he said calmly, "I will destroy her. She won't dare." I was terrified, but I didn't show it. I just hugged him tighter and whispered, "I love you, Dad." We lived in this toxic bubble for several months. He was my only son, and I was a planet trapped in his orbit. I forgot about my friends, my ambitions, my own life. I needed nothing but him. One day, while he was at a board meeting, I decided to back up his laptop, something I did for him weekly. While the files were transferring, I noticed a locked folder I'd never seen before. Curiosity, a dangerous and long-dormant emotion, got the better of me. I knew his passwords. I opened it. Inside were thousands of photos of me, not just the ones he took openly, but clandestine shots. Photos of me in my room, taken from an angle I couldn't place. Photos of me out with friends from years ago. He had been watching me, documenting my life, long before I ever came to live with him. Under the photos was a text file, a journal. I opened it. "My Chloe," it read, "you are mine. You will always be mine. No one will ever come between us. No one. I am ready to do anything for you. I am ready to kill if I have to. I love you." An icy coldness seeped into my bones. This wasn't love. This was madness. I realized I was in terrible danger. I closed the folder, my hands shaking. I went to my room, locked the door, and for the first time in a long time, I cried. I cried for my own stupidity, for the girl I used to be. I knew I had to escape, before it was too late. I started packing, my movements frantic, silent. I took the emergency cash I had saved, my passport, my phone. I slipped out of the house like a thief in the night. I walked down the long, winding driveway, not knowing where I was going. I felt like a bird that had just escaped its golden cage. I was free, but also terrifyingly alone. I took an Uber to the San Francisco airport. I wanted to get as far away as possible. I bought a one-way ticket for the next flight leaving, not even looking at the destination. It was going to Portland, Oregon. As the plane took off, I watched the glittering lights of the Bay Area shrink below me. I closed my eyes. I wanted to forget him. I wanted to forget myself. In Portland, I rented a small room in a house full of students near the quirky, vibrant Alberta Arts District. I got a job as a barista in a local coffee shop. I lived a quiet, anonymous life. I had no friends, no family, but I felt safe. I felt like I could finally breathe. 6 months passed. I met a young man named Liam. He was a graduate student in architecture at the University of Oregon, kind, intelligent, and funny. He loved me for who I was, this quiet, wounded girl who worked at a coffee shop. He never tried to change me or control me. With him, I felt the gentle warmth of a healthy love, a love that nurtured instead of possessed. We started dating, and slowly I began to heal. I felt like the happiest woman in the world. I thought I had finally found my destiny. One evening, in a small, cozy restaurant, Liam proposed to me. I was so overwhelmed with joy, I couldn't hold back my tears. I accepted without a moment's hesitation. We began planning the wedding, a small, simple ceremony in a public garden. I chose a simple, elegant lace dress. We were so happy. I thought I had finally, truly forgotten him. But I was wrong. On my wedding day, as I stood in front of the mirror in my small apartment, putting the finishing touches on my makeup, I saw his reflection in the glass. He was standing in the doorway of my room. His eyes were burning with that same fire I knew all too well. "My sweet Chloe," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Did you really think you could escape me? Did you think you could marry someone else? You are mine. You will always be mine." I was paralyzed with horror. He approached me, took my hand in his iron grip, and said, "Come, we're going home." I tried to pull away, but he was too strong. He dragged me out to the street, forced me into a black SUV that was idling at the curb, and we sped away. He brought me back to the glass house on the hill in Palo Alto. He locked the front door, lifted me into his arms, wedding dress and all, and carried me to his bedroom. He laid me on the bed. "My sweet Chloe," he said, his voice a low, menacing whisper, "you shouldn't have done that. Now you're going to be punished." I started to cry, helpless and defenseless. He began to kiss me, his hand sliding over my wedding dress, his fingers finding the zipper. I couldn't resist. I was under his power, his property once more. He did what he wanted with me, and I could do nothing. I was his prisoner. I thought of Liam, of our wedding, of the life that had been stolen from me. I was desperate, but deep down, a small, defiant voice whispered that this might not be the end. My father leaned over me. He delicately tore the lace of my wedding dress, peeling it away from my body. His hands touched my skin, possessive and burning. "My little Chloe, you're mine," he murmured, his voice thick with a terrifying mix of desire and rage. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. "You will never escape again," he whispered in my ear. "You belong to me, and I will make you understand that." Then suddenly we heard a frantic pounding on the front door. It was Liam. I could hear his panicked voice. "Chloe, Chloe, open the door. I know you're in there. We're getting married." My father stood up, a cold, cruel smile on his face. "You chose the wrong time to run away," he said. "Now the only person you will see for the rest of your life is me. I will keep you with me forever, no matter the cost." He walked out of the bedroom. I could hear him opening the front door, the sound of a scuffle, a choked cry from Liam, and then the heavy thud of the door slamming shut. My father came back into the room, his expression determined. He pulled a small, silver handgun from the pocket of his jacket and placed it on the bedside table. He looked at me with a diabolical smile. "You will never escape again," he said. "No one will save you. You are my sweet Chloe. You belong to me, and I am ready to do anything, even kill, to keep you." I looked at the gun, then at him. Love was dead. Fear was all that remained, and the only question left was whether I could break free from this prison, or if I would die trying. My father picked up the gun and smiled. This story is a dark one, and its conclusion is yet to be written. If this tale of obsession and control has captivated you, make sure you are subscribed to Stoic Love with notifications on, so you'll be the first to know what happens to Chloe. Thank you for being a part of our journey into the shadows of the human heart.